Hey, toy fans, Rob here, back with another Star Trek review for you guys. Last time, we checked out the Admiral Kirk figure, part of the 2022 Classic Star Trek Collection from Playmates Toys, and now I finally have Spock and Khan to add to my collection. Khan, I got pretty quickly after Kirk, but Spock, man, have I been on a journey. This is actually the third Spock figure that I've purchased so far. You can see in the photos that I'm showing here, they decided to paint the, age lines? Sorry, Leonard, around Spock's face, and they just couldn't get the paint lined up correctly on the first two figures that I purchased. Fortunately, by the time I got a third one in, it was actually pretty decent. So I decided to roll with this Spock figure moving forward, and the other two got shipped and returned back. Anyway, that headache out of the way, let's just take another quick look at this packaging here. It does look like the original Playmates packaging. That's a little bit different dimensions, but a lot of the same graphics have been repeated. On Spock here, we do have a bio for the figure on the back. There you go, and you can see a description of his accessories and the other figures in the wave. And we get the exact same thing with Khan Noonien Singh. And I didn't mention this last time, but there is a QR code on the back of the packaging here. If you guys look at that, it'll actually take you to the Playmates website, where they've done a pretty great job of making it look like a 90s Trek website. I'm a big fan. Alright, enough about the packaging and the backstory. Let's get these guys out of the box and see what they're all about. Alright, toy fans, so here we have Spock and Khan out of the packaging. Now, these being Playmates figures, they come with a ton of accessories. Spock has this engineering tool here that, I'll be honest, I don't remember seeing in the movie. I probably just need to watch it again. It doesn't articulate or anything, no paint. We also have this tricorder from the Wrath of Khan era. Not my definitive personal memory of what a tricorder should look like, but again, I'm sure it's in the movie. Of course, I'm much more familiar with how they looked on the original series or even the Next Generation era. And then we have Spock with his display base. Spock himself, as I've already scrutinized, does have some pretty decent paint applications on the face, but he is seeming to miss a little bit of paint at the top of his, it's not a comm badge, but his decorative badge there at the breast of his uniform. We do have his rank insignia on his lapel, or on his shoulder strap, and then of course here on his arm as well. Now, one thing about this Spock figure is he comes with radiation gloves, which I think is a nice touch, and they're even painted, which these days for a Playmates accessory is kind of unusual. But they are like this soft, gummy, I don't know what you want to call it, plastic, I suppose. I don't like how they're implemented, though. As you can see, it already tried to pull his hand off when I pulled them off. They're designed to just kind of midden over his existing hands. I would have preferred if these were either snap-ons or if they were just swappable hands with, they just had pegs in the end of them and you just stuck them in his arms. As it stands, they are a bit tricky, especially this one that's on his Live Long and Prosper hand, to get on and off without me worrying that I'm going to damage the peg for the hand of the figure. But once we have those off, Spock can do a Live Long and Prosper Vulcan salute, and then he's able to hold his accessories in his left hand. And again, with Spock, I think I would have preferred an additional interchangeable hand along with the gloves so that he's not always doing the Vulcan salute. I get why it's there, but it does get kind of old when you want to do other things with the figure. Now, Khan, on the other hand, has some decent paintwork on him. I am impressed that they've painted his pants the way they have, all of his metal work on his costume, his insignia, on his necklace. And on the back of him, they even paint all the legs. I do feel like it looks a little plain on the back torso of the figure, but that's probably more or less screen accurate. My Khan figure, however, when it comes to articulation, his left wrist does not move at all. And I've collected a lot of action figures, and I can tell you, the way this feels, if I force this, that hand's coming right off. Like the peg is just going to break. So I'm a little disappointed by that. I may try to boil this figure later and see if I can fix that, but we shouldn't have to do that when we're paying for these things. But he does have a great amount of accessories. He's got his tongs that he grabs the eels with. He's got his bowl, which is actually sculpted pretty nicely and has the eels inside there. He's got the same phaser accessory that Kirk came with the exact same detail on it. And then he's, of course, got the Genesis controls, which, looks like they did in the movie. Again, I wish a little paint was on this. That would have been nice. It is completely hollow on the back, but, it works for what it is. And then Khan, of course, has a Starfleet insignia base. I don't know that we needed an augment sort of emblem, but I do feel like in the 90s, that even if one didn't exist, Playmates would have made one up or worked with Paramount to come up with an emblem that wasn't just the standard Delta that these other guys are also coming with. Height-wise, these figures do come in right around 5 1/4 inches tall, so not too bad. And with Admiral Kirk, I did a bunch of figure comparisons of Star Trek figures across the lines over the years. But just for this one, we'll do it a little quicker. Here is a Playmates 90s Kirk figure. So as you can see, Spock is standing on a display base. He does stand about the same height. The form factor of these 90s figures is a bit wider and a bit more exaggerated than what we're seeing with these figures that definitely tend to aim for a bit of realness. As you can see, Spock does have a more slender figure, and William Shatner, appropriately has a bit more girth to his midsection, and even Khan himself does seem to be sculpted relatively in scale with what he appeared to be on screen. Of course, we never saw him standing next to Kirk or Spock in that movie. But faulty wrist articulation aside, I do think I prefer these 2022 Playmate Star Trek figures way more than the original 90s versions. And in case you missed my Kirk video, let's just run through the articulation really quick on Spock here. He does have an elbow joint that bends forward and backwards and rotates at the elbow. His wrist can rotate all the way around. He does have a hinge in the shoulder to move up and down and rotate all the way around. His head can rotate left and right. There is a bit of tilt upward and a bit of tilt downward. Let's get that arm out of the way. And a bit of tilt downward, but not a whole lot. There's no waist articulation. That's one of the major changes between these and the 90s figures. There is a hinge at the hip, so his leg can move out pretty far, move forward and backward. He's got a single jointed knee that bends forward and backwards, but there's also a rotation there. And then he does have an ankle pivot, so his foot can move backward and forward. And there's a left and right swivel. Not really a pivot, but a left and right swivel. So it helps a little bit more with articulation than what we saw with the 90s figures. Now, because of the articulation and the way it works, I think a benefit of these movie figures, these movie area figures, is you look at Khan here. Khan kind of has, I don't know, he's bow-legged or looks like he needs to be riding a horse, right? I think that's just what they had to do to make the articulation work the way that they had kind of envisioned. I don't really like it on Khan. I think it kind of sticks out and looks awkward, but at least with the Starfleet officers, they have that sort of uniform jacket hanging down a little bit lower, so I think it kind of hides the weird hips a little better. Alright, toy fans, well, that's my review of Spock and Khan from the 2022 Playmates Wrath of Khan Classic Trek figure line. Having 3 of these figures in hand now, I do feel like the line is starting to show some cracks in the armor. I'd like to see some accessories implemented in different ways, and I'm not a fan of Khan's wrist getting stuck, but for now I'm still on board, and I think I'm at least going to try to finish out the Wrath of Khan crew. And with the price of action figures rising across the board, at $12.99, I'd still say these are some figures you want to check out, if you're a Star Trek fan. Thanks for joining me today, toy fans. If you like what you see here, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at D21Beast, and I'll see you guys next time. Live long and prosper.